So I'm going to do so I learned we're talking about Paul today. Good job, Luke. Let's go around and just so I learn your names, since I don't ever leave my room, let's just start. I know those two, obviously.
That's me. Susan.
Susan.
Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Jason.
Jason.
Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Peggy.
Peggy.
Annette.
Annette.
Mhm.
Okay. I totally forgot about it. Luke and Abby.
Abby. And Nora.
And Nora. I remember Nora because that's a subdivision of, or I don't know how you call it, but it's part of Indianapolis. Right? I'm kind of a Midwest kid, but I'm originally from Texas, so I decided to stop being cold and come down here now. I wish it was cold. So, but anyways, yeah. So we're talking about Paul's first missionary journey. We're going to be talking mostly in Acts chapter 14. We'll be jumping around a little bit. I don't really do PowerPoints, as these two know, because as technologically savvy as I think I am, something always seems to go wrong, so I just don't even bother. And then my handwriting's horrible, so I probably won't use this thing anyway. So they'd like for us to start talking about, so I have a list here of the top 10 fears in 2020. Corona is not one of them. So what do you guys think might be the top 10 fears in 2020? Traveling, it's not on my list. There's a couple easy ones.
Fear of flying.
Fear of flying. That's number 9. That's aerophobia.
Political unrest.
That could be a lot of different one of these. Depends on where you are.
Losing a job.
Losing a job. Yeah. Yeah. Think phobias.
Irrational fear.
Yeah, irrational fears. These are all very rational. Y'all are telling me. Think irrational fears. Bugs. Yeah. That arachnophobia is number 1. The fear of snakes is number 2. Ophidiophobia. Thank you.
We're not afraid of spiders. I'm just afraid of other bugs.
My favorite one is the fear of falling, or is it the fear of gravity? No. Okay. Well, I don't consider it a fear of heights, but I have a healthy respect of what gravity can do to my body from any given. Like we were at 4 last night for my mom's birthday, and I have a 3-year-old, and we were on the 2nd story, and there's like no railing, and I was like, why did you choose this? And they were like, I want to golf. I'm like, he's like, can I do it by myself? I'm like, no. All I can see, I don't know, like, if Luke's like this, as soon as you have a kid, like, you start getting into, like, chaos theory, like, real bad, like, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And so I think this is why my dad was always so stressed, is because he had 5 kids. And so here he is thinking, he's probably imagining every single, thing that could ever come out of it. And so that's kind of what happened last night. I can see every eventuality that happens, and that's why I'm always on edge. And so anyways, apparently agoraphobia is the open or crowded spaces. I don't understand that one. Maybe it's because we live in Lubbock and that's all we have. Anybody afraid of crowded spaces? Like New York, you go to New York and you're like, this ain't right.
I hate New York. Too crowded.
I know one that's thalassophobia, that people are afraid of open water. So like if you're on a boat and you're not staying at the beach anywhere, people get really freaked out by that.
That's why you stay on the inside of the boat.
It's like,
Can't tell.
There you go. Of course, there's claustrophobia. Number 3 was acrophobia, which is the fear of heights. Agoraphobia. Cynophobia is number 5, which is the fear of dogs. I didn't think that would be so high, but I guess they're. But anyways, so today we're going to be talking about kind of the different fears we have in life. Even though we're called to follow Jesus, sometimes there's always a cost, right? There's always that cost that comes with following Jesus is not an easy task. We're going to kind of delve into that. And some of that we will have to face or push through our fears. So first, let's go into Mark chapter 1 and then verse 35 to 39. So I'd like to focus it. But how they have it written here is I really like it because I like to always focus on the Jesus connection first. Believe it or not, Luke. I feel like anything I say about how I like to do something, they're going to disagree because I've already talked. So if anybody's got Mark chapter 1, verse 35 and 39, just go for it.
Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons.
So a lot of what we're going to talk about, and I think we've been talking about this entire quarter, and we'll continue to talk about, is evangelism, which is not an easy topic for me to talk about because I am not, believe it or not, I am not the most outgoing person in the world. I'm very good at getting my energy level up to talk to people, and then when I get home, it's like a crash, and I just get, I don't remember, like, for me, like, the start of coronavirus, before we saw how bad it was, the start of coronavirus was awesome because I just got to go home and ignore people, and it was amazing, and I loved it. And as an accountant, nobody ever wants to come talk to me anyway at work, so it's like, whatever, now I don't even have to go to the office. So we're going to be talking a lot about evangelism, and this is not something I have an easy time talking about, obviously. I will be not happy with how this lesson is going to go because I'm going to be challenged. So we're talking about Paul's first missionary journey. This is from 44 to 46 AD. I always like to give like a good backstory about this. This person who's the emperor at this time is the same person who was, and I believe it was, who's the guy for Marcus Aurelius? I think it was Marcus Aurelius at the time, but I could be wrong. I'm sorry. And so they're going through, and they travels, and you probably have the map in your Bible, which is what everybody first notices when they have their Bible. But they did all this stuff, and they went 1,400 miles on foot. Well, mostly on foot. They did some water too. And just to give you a perspective, Lubbock to Sacramento is 1,400 miles. And if you were to do that, that would take 21 hours driving with no stops, which that's never going to happen. And that's at an average speed of like 66 miles, 67 miles an hour. So these guys traveled from Lubbock, walked from Lubbock to Sacramento with some slight boat travel again. I don't think I could have done that. But, you know, that's some of the other thing that speaks to me is they're talking about evangelism. They're talking about going out in all the world. And I can't even leave my house. So that's fun. So we're going to talk about, let's hit chapter, we're going to mostly stay in chapter 14, but verses 19 through 20, we're going to say, let's say 24. Yeah, we'll do 19 through 24. So I'll read it. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and if I say the word wrong, please correct me. Iconium, and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. The next day, he and Barnabas left for Derbe. They preached the gospel in that city and won a large number of disciples. Then they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. We must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, they said. Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord, in whom they had put their trust. After going through Pisidia, and this is where I mess up, they came into Pamphylia, which is where they make pamphlets, and when they had preached the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. Attalia? I don't know. That's not true. Don't lie to me because I'll believe you. And you'll feel bad. So, what speaks to you? I always like to ask the open-ended question before we get down to it. What is, of these few verses, what is the most telling to you? What did you, because we each read something under a different guise. It runs through different filters. So for each, and you don't have to say it if you don't want to, but for each one of you, what is the verse that sticks out the most?
We must go through many hardships.
We must go through many hardships. Yes, that's a very uplifting verse, isn't it?
Well, we're not all in it all by ourselves.
That's true too.
That's a big factor. So you're not.
Paul wasn't doing this journey by himself, right? I believe Luke was with him on this one, which is why he writes it so well.
Yeah.
This is not just somebody told me. This was, I was there and I saw everything. Which is why I like Acts so much. First-hand accounts. Anything else? You guys? Mike's out. Where did that? So let's talk about this idea of we must go through many hardships. So we already have, what hardship did Paul just go through? This is an easy question because it's like 2 verses earlier.
Almost got killed.
Yeah, he almost got killed. He was almost so killed that they thought he was killed. Which, to me, I'm wondering, like, was he in a coma? Did his heart go so slow that it just stopped beating? Like, because they're not, I mean, they might not have, like, I don't know. What do you call the stupid things, the pulse, the finger pulses? Pulse oximeter? That is way, there's an easier word for that. I don't know. They don't have stethoscopes. We're going to say stethoscopes. They don't have stethoscopes there, but I'm sure they understand what a pulse is. They were advanced in medicine enough, and this is not the Dark Ages, right? This is a what, Pax Romana. This is a time of great learning, and so I mean they had aqueducts for goodness sakes, so they figured out something. So I assume they understood how to check for somebody if they were dead. And so for me to be so stoned that, or to be so hurt that they thought you were dead, and they just dragged him out. So he didn't wake up during the whole time they dragged him out to the city. We don't have an idea of how long that was, but I'm going to assume it's longer than 5 feet. And so they drug him into the outside of the city, and they just kind of left him there. So Paul got so beat up, and that they thought he was dead. And I don't know much about corporal punishment today, but stoning seems like one of those things I would rather never, ever, ever, ever go through. That seems one of those ones I'll give a hard pass and say that's okay. They were very inventive, I would like to say back then, about how they doled out punishment. And stoning is one of those ones that I will never, ever want to experience. These are not small skipping stones they're hitting you with. These are rather large. These are grown men putting their full weight into something. And I'm wondering if Paul would have been there, when he was Saul, if he would have been the person there making sure that the guy was dead. If that was his, because it seems like it was. But anyways, that's a occasion. So we have this thing. Paul is talking about saying you're going to go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God, having just been through one. Does reading this make you feel bad about anything you consider a hardship? That's for me. And I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty and not trying to say, well, I walked both ways uphill, to get to school or something like that. I'm not trying to pull that like. I think our problems are sufficient to themselves, depending on when we live. But to me, it says something that somebody can go through that type of trauma and can still say the things he's saying. And I often, like I said, I introspect a lot. And I always put this up, could I do the same thing? And I don't know. That's the hardest part about this, is that if I went through what Paul did, would I still get up? And we're going to get this in a second, but we'll go ahead and do it here. What happened with Iconium? So he got into Iconium, he got stoned. We say that easily. Left for dead. What happened? Is this the final story of Iconium? Do we never reach it ever again? What happens?
He gets back up and goes back in.
Yeah.
Goes back in.
Right back at it.
Yeah. It says he got up and went back into the city. How? To me, it's a wondrous that he didn't get stoned again. Maybe he knew to stay away from those certain individuals, but he went back in. So not only did he take his punches, but he decided to get back up and go take them some more, or put himself at risk to take them some more. Has Paul always done this? Knowing what we know of Acts, I don't know if we fit that part yet, but has Paul ever gotten hurt? Because he's been stoned more than once, actually. Has he ever had to deal with stoning or something like that and not gone back in?
No. He was fearless at that. I don't know if he was fearless, but
Mhm.
it didn't stop him.
True. But did Paul ever run away? I wouldn't say run away. Did Paul ever, discretion is the better part of valor. Did he ever use discretion on what he did? He fled. Did he ever flee that you guys know of? I know Luke's looking for it already.
I don't remember which city, but there is one that he's going like, okay, I'm out, I'll come back later.
I don't think there was so much fleeing though, as saying, fine, I'm done with you.
There is one. Luke, are you looking for the basket?
Yeah, that was right at the beginning.
Yeah. I think you are looking for the basket. There is one time, Luke's finding it, where I think the Spirit basically told him, or a lot of people warned him and said, hey, if you stay here, you're gonna die. And he said, okay, and he left. And they actually lowered him from the city walls in a basket. Kind of like I was gonna say Tangled, but Rapunzel's story almost. They lowered him in a basket. So to me, is it chapter 9? You got it? You wanna read it?
When many days had passed, the Jews plotted to kill him and Saul, but their plot became known to Saul. They were watching the gates day and night in order to kill him, but the disciples took him by night and let him down through the opening of the wall, through an opening in the wall, and lowered him in the basket.
So it's interesting to me again that he doesn't. Again, we don't. Anything we talk about is going to be conjecture, but it's interesting to me that Paul knows when to go back and when to exercise discretion and when not to.
But if you're the Jewish leaders at that point and you see Paul back in here, it's like, isn't that the guy we stoned? I mean, that looks bad on the Jewish leaders. So,
They didn't do a good job of stoning him.
I mean,
You can use bigger
we're
rocks.
so bad at killing somebody, he's back in here. Like, what are we doing? So.
See, this is where I like to put not our personal spin on it, but where we start trying to inhabit the bodies of the people we read about. And for me, it'd be like, well, we did our best. He ain't dead. I guess we just let him live.
We can't.
Right? At that point, it's just like, well, we thought he was dead. He's not dead. What's it going to take to kill this guy? Because at that point, to me, if I'm a Jewish leader, I'm like, well, I have to go to the Romans, and they're not going to, because he's a Roman citizen. Well, they don't know that at this point, but it takes some time to get to do it that way. And so, for me, as a Jewish leader, I'd be like, well, he's not dead. Maybe I'll just let him walk. Or maybe he just was like, I ain't going over to that neighborhood anymore. I'm gonna stay over here. But to me, he got up, he went back in, and he kept teaching. And then the next day, him and Barnabas went to Derbe. And then it says he actually went back again later. It says they preached the gospel in that city in Derbe and won a large number of disciples. And then they returned to Lystra and Iconium, strengthening the disciples. So not only did he get stoned to go back in, then he decided, I'm going to go take a break and then I'm going to come back again. That is a lot of guts. And I think that's one of our messages here is to be a follower of Jesus, it's going to take guts. There's a very famous passage that everybody knows about that I always hit on. And it always hit me when I was studying this, which is what is the wide is the path in there, right? Wide is the path of destruction, there is the way to Jesus. And then the other one, which was when he's talking to the rich man, he says, sell your stuff, and he was discouraged because that was a very hard thing to do. To me, Christianity is not an easy religion to get right. It's an easy religion to give lip service to, especially where we live. But it is not an easy religion to get right. And this passage has challenged me in more than one way. But anyways, we'll keep going. Anybody have thoughts? Pause for thoughts. Pause for a station identification. That's not a lot of old radio shows. So I want to talk about verse 20 because I think this is actually it's a little. There's a phrase in there. It says, "But after the disciples had gathered around him." I want to underline that. I want to highlight this. Why is this important? Why is the disciples gathering important?
They're praying for him.
They're praying for him.
It could be healing him. I don't know.
We don't know. It could be laying on hands. They could be praying for him. They could just. To me, it just means that we are not a silo, right? We're always taught that the church is the body, and that we each have different parts and things like that. But to me, I don't know if a hermit can be a Christian. I don't know if, or not a practicing one. To me, Christianity takes others. It takes people around you. It's why the church exists. Because if we all, it's why everybody was intent on getting back here after, even online is online. That's fine. But it's just not the same, is it? It's not the same as having those people around you and having that spirit be within. And to me, when it says the disciples gathered together, to me that matters. To me, I remember when my dad got cancer the first time, and how much it meant to him. And now as a 13-year-old punk, I was like, why do they need to be in our business? But to him, it mattered that the church came around him and laid hands on him and prayed over him. And now as I get older, I realize that matters. That this is not we're all struggling, right? But are we struggling alone? No, where this is a shared struggle. That's why we have prayer requests at the beginning. It's why we talk about it. It's why we can empathize and sympathize with each other. And to me, that right now is why, especially going through what we're going through right now, with not just the politics, but the coronavirus, with the weather not working itself out, with everything going on right now, it's nice to realize that we're still gathering just like we did back 2,000 years ago. We're still gathering around and talking to people and praying on people. So I just want to highlight that. It's a big deal for me. And then, could Paul have quit? And would we have blamed him for quitting? Oh, you're just on. I'm sorry. I thought he had like some big thing to say.
Almost never.
Whatever. He likes to catch me on like the nuances and then go, aha, I got you there.
Never
Like every week. So,
love you.
yeah. I don't think I would have blamed Paul for just being like, I ain't going back in there. Obviously, what did Jesus say when he sent his disciples out the first time? About if you're not welcome, what do you do? Shake the dust off your feet. I think he would have been justified. Because we don't have a lot of times it'll say the Spirit told him to go do what? Like with Philip, the Spirit moved him to go. It literally, I think, made him disappear after talking to the eunuch, right? That was Philip. I think it says he literally disappeared or he left.
Taken away.
Taken away is what it says.
Yes, it's taken away.
He literally takes, so I don't know if it's an omission here. I'd like to say the Spirit led Paul in whatever he did. But on this one, I would not have blamed him for not going back in. I would not have blamed him for saying, I'm going to shake the dust off my feet. And I've always wondered, and this is why I wish the Bible had so as an accountant, if I have a question, there's always a footnote that goes along with it. I can always go look at a company's reports and go, oh, there's a footnote that literally explains everything I ever wanted to know about why the heck this happened. And so I wish the Bible had footnotes more than just what some guy decided to. So I have a study Bible. I have some footnotes, but it doesn't give me the background of knowing. All right, here's the little version, and I'm going to give you the what I would call the Tolkien version, which is the really long, drawn out one. That's way too long-winded. It's true. Boring is way too long-winded.
That's why they had to make a movie.
Oh gosh, he spends 2 chapters on the trees of Warren. No, not that's different.
I will
That was
say,
a different
I
chapter.
do think him going back in was less risky than him going in the first time.
You think so?
And the reason why is because Paul and all of his pattern of every time he got to a city, he always went to the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after the Jews stoned him, he knew, or he was guided to know and understand that he had convinced as many Jewish people that Jesus was the Messiah as he was going to.
Mm-hmm.
And so him going back in was not necessarily to preach to the Jews, it was to uplift Christians.
Hmm.
And so I think this is completely speculative, obviously, but I think when he went back into the city, he knew he was not going to interact with the Jews very much, if at all. And I think it's important to note that probably why he ended up going back later was to encourage those same Christians, because he knew what the Jews were like in Coney.
That's actually what it says. It says he went back to strengthen disciples and encouraging them to remain true. I hit on this gathered around him, the disciples. I wonder if they stayed around him, right? They said, well, obviously, if we leave him by himself, he's going to get hurt. So maybe they stayed around, right? Strength in numbers. Again, conjecture. I'm sorry. We're going to go off conjecture. Does it matter? I think, again, we're going to talk about him. Let's talk about him going back in. To where he goes back and says, strengthening the disciples and encouraging them to remain true to the faith. Do we do a good job about not just converting Christians, but staying with them through their spiritual walk? No?
No.
Do we dunk them and dump them?
Sometimes I see that.
I think it depends on who it is that
Yeah.
you're converting and who it is that's doing the conversion and how long they're in the same area, and there's just a whole lot of variables.
I understand. I can agree with that to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, I used to live in San Diego. The church I went to in San Diego, about 80% of the congregation was Navy or Marines. And you don't have any control in the Navy or in the Marine Corps where you're going to be a week from now. And so there were literally times where we would meet with people and teach with them for 6 months and get them baptized. And then a week later, they'd get orders to transfer to a base in Okinawa or someplace like that. And all you could do is say, well, here's some people that we know in your area, look them up. Tell them we sent you, but there's nothing we can't go to Okinawa with you.
Sure. Funny enough, actually, one of my best friends is in Okinawa right now, and with the Marine Corps, and it has been difficult keeping up with him. Just time zone, even with my phones and all the different messaging apps that we exist in the world right now. Just that, luckily he has to get put on night duty a lot, so I can text him that way. But it's been difficult, so I understand that. For one, I think we could be doing a better job with this. I really do. When I was reading this, it made me text my buddy because I realized that I think this is one place where we could do better than we have in the past, because we have the technology to reach out. And it might not be the most meaningful level of communication, right? It might not be that handshake. It might not be that hug. It might not be what we want to do, but it's at least something. Does that make sense? And I always like to challenge my class every week. And usually the challenge is, please show up next week. But this week I want to challenge you that I think we all have somebody in our life that may not be an accountability buddy, but might be somebody that we sit there and might be a kindred person in the spirit. I was going to say kindred spirit, but it's really in the spirit. And I want to encourage, reach out to that person this week. Text them, just text them. If they don't answer, that's fine. But put that hand out there. Reach out there, because I think we could be doing a better job of this. I think a lot of times, and I'm not trying to degrade anything you said, but for me and myself, moving everywhere, I've lived in a lot of different places in this country. I've lived a lot. I moved more than the military kids did, which is why all my friends are military kids. But I wonder if I could not be doing a better job of this. And again, I internalize everything. And with the technology we have today, I think as a people, as a church, we could probably be doing a better job of reaching out to other believers and edifying them. We don't know what they're going through a lot of times, right? It's really hard for them to tell us, and we're not there. We don't have to be there to be that person for them to tell us everything, but just telling them, hey, I hope everything's going great. Hope you're doing all right. Just want to know I'm praying for you this week. Just encourage you to do that this week. Challenge you to do that this week. I'm going to try to do that this week. I'll do my best. But we'll see. That's one of those things that really hit me this week was when I read that. I keep thinking, are we doing a good job of building those and helping those people that are either recent converts, and it doesn't have to be recent converts, but believers in Christ. Because I think we also lean on our ministers a little too much, and I don't think we need to. I think we can take on a little bit of that burden ourselves. So anyways, that was a long tangent. So sorry. Let's keep going. So we go through many hardships. We talked about that, and I think that's a good one, and we could hit on that all day. But I want to get to the next one. It says, Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord. To me, this makes me think that elders are important. If I already didn't believe elders were important, I believe it now. It's easy to say that they converted people, but the thing is that to have, because they're setting up these different churches in these towns, I think elders are necessary for that. And obviously they believe so because they mentioned it specifically saying that they went and appointed them elders for each church. Not just one group like they had a bunch of different churches and then their elder group was a centralized thing and they kind of divvied it up. No, each church had an individual eldership. And I think that's important. I think it's a nuance there. I think it's a little bit of a nuance, but I think it's important. Because a lot of times we see a lot of corporatization of churches these days. And I wonder if that's not the way it's supposed to be. I wonder if we're supposed to have, our own elders in each church. With prayer and fasting, committed them to the Lord. When was the last time y'all fasted? I was talking about this with my wife the other day. When was the last time y'all fasted? I fasted one time when I was a teenager.
Oh, well, we did it at a retreat once, but
Yeah.
that wasn't really a
It's not easy as an American to fast, is it? I own a thing called a refrigerator. And it's got lots of good stuff in it, especially now that I get to be in charge of the grocery list. I still think like a 12-year-old when it comes to food, which my son loves. But anyways, I have always said, this is every time I've hit a spiritual crux or a crossroads in my life, or even a physical one, like trying to find a job or whatever, I was like, you know what, I should fast. That would probably be a really good idea right now, and I never do it. I'm not telling you that you need to go fast right now. I'm just saying maybe we should actually take those activities seriously. I wonder how often we actually think about it as an actual serious spiritual discipline. So I'm going to try it when the time is right. I ain't going to tell you about it because then, of course, I go back to Jesus' teaching about, anoint yourself with oil and keep on walking. So I wonder if we've lost that spiritual discipline there. Let me hit another one. Here's a fun question. If you had to go through a lot of different tribulations, we have it comfortable here, relatively comfortable here. Some of us more so than others, but compared to, I don't know, the Amazon forest, I think I'm doing okay. Is there a limit to how many trials and tribulations you're willing to go through for Jesus Christ? I don't need you to answer, obviously, because that'd be a really awkward question to talk about. But every time, I won't say every time, but there's been a lot of times where I've been going through different trials where I've wondered, is this the time where I finally say is enough is enough? And luckily it hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if it ever will. I keep falling back on my foundations. But is there a time, and again, this isn't, we don't have to discuss this, but would there be a time where we say enough is enough, right? We always talk about people having a breaking point. Is there a time where we say enough is enough? Because I don't know. Stoning might be one of those times, honestly. Stoning might be one of those times. If you threw a pretty heavy rock at me, I might be inclined to say, all right, I'm out. Pain is a really easy deterrent for me.
I think individually, it's a lot easier to withstand stuff that's directed at you.
Mm-hmm.
It's when they start directing stuff at your family that it becomes tougher. And you put a gun to my head and say, renounce Christ or I'm going to kill you. It's not gonna be that hard for me to just say, okay, pull the trigger. He put his gun to my son's head. You know, he's got his whole life ahead of him. That's where it gets difficult.
That's very true. I hope I never have to encounter that. You always hear about the stories of Nazi Germany. Is it Kierkegaard? Though? You know Kierkegaard? Okay. He's a German priest or preacher that lived through the Nazi Germany. He wrote some very interesting stuff. But you always hear these stories about, well, even in Africa right now, people go into houses, and if you don't join the military, they start shooting family, right? And we always say we stand up to oppression like that, but do you stand up to, like, it's an excellent question. Let's take it out of the metaphysical and make it into the physical. Do you stand up to oppression? How long do you stand up to that kind of oppression? We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to draw a line in the sand. It's just, that's one of the things I always think about, kind of like you said, it's one of those things is what, and when thinking, and we always have this great example of Abraham and Isaac, right? It was this great paragon example of Abraham's faith in God. And all I can think about is, I hope I never have to go through that. Because that's crazy. Thank God. I don't know what Abraham was thinking. I can assume, I know what he was thinking when God said stop. You know, but that one was hard. That's a good, thought-provoking statement. I don't want to think about it. I'm sure Luke doesn't want to think about it either. Nope. So let's talk a little bit more. I want to go back to this elders thing because there's one more thing I wanted to hit on. There's probably a bunch of things I want to hit on, but so it says, appointing them for each church and with fear and fasting committed them to the Lord. This word committed. Are there any other words that we could put in its place? Right, Greek is a multifaceted, amazing language that I will never try to ever read. I remember going through college with my roommates who were Bible majors, and they were trying to learn exegesis, which has nothing to do with Jesus. It's all about translating Greek. And I was like, good luck, buddies. I will go study accounting theory because that is at least written in English. So this word committed, could we put another word in its place and have it be the same? I'm not trying to tell you to change the Bible, but is there words, and you might actually have them in your Bible if you have a different translation. Is there a different translation? Does anybody have like the New American? What do you got there, Luke? Of course he does. What is it? Does it say committed? It says committed? Okay. Anybody else says anything different? I have one word here that says, so there's one that they provide, and it says, what? Dedicated, yeah. Entrusted. So when they said the elders are being entrusted, they entrusted them to the Lord. I'm going to put entrusted there. Entrusted them to the Lord, in whom they had put their trust. See, that's where you go. What does entrusted mean in this context? What does entrusted mean in general? If I say I entrusted something, what is it?
You trust somebody else with it. You give it to them.
Okay. What is the connotation there? What comes along with that trust? Trust. Unity is the key word in unit without the Y. Is there a certain expectation? Like, let's say, I don't know. Let's say you let a teenager drive your car, because that is another thing I'm dreading in the future. Let's say you let a teenager drive your car. What are you entrusting them with? Take care of the car, right? What did you say?
Their life.
Their life. You're entrusting them with their life, not just the car. Anything else?
Other people.
You're entrusting them with everybody else that's on the road right there with it. That's why when everybody gets on Facebook, it's like, oh, my son's got their learner's permit. And I go, thank God I don't live in Indy anymore. Because I was like, I knew what your kid was like when they were 3, and we ain't doing that. So you're putting their faith, you're putting your faith in them that they're not going to just ruin your car, that they're not going to ruin their lives, and they're not going to ruin the lives of everybody around. Driving is a big responsibility. I'm still surprised they let me do it.
So are we.
I just keep buying bigger vehicles with enough metal around my family to keep them safe. Just wait till I get my dream car. Then we're in trouble. Anyways, so to me, I think it's a good analogy for about what are we entrusting to these elders? First off, what are the elders entrusting to the Lord? They're entrusting their lives. We already talked about
Their safety.
their safety. Again, we've already been in Iconium. Iconium might not be the safest town in the world to be a Christian. Somebody already got stoned. High profile person already got stoned. So what about the little people? So we're entrusting these elders not only with the Lord with their safety. What else are we entrusting them to? The Word. Because we have a lot of gospels that we went over a few months ago in 1st and 2nd John where people were doing what with the Word? Messing it up. They're messing it up real good. So much so that people nowadays, when we talk about, this is what, because we went the first week, we went like real in depth to what these people believed, and it was some crazy talk. What was it that what was the one of the duology one?
There was
There was a few, but it's a big thing to entrust people. I think, especially elders, to the Lord. And to me, not only are you entrusting to the Lord, but you're entrusting everybody that's going to follow them. Right? You're not just entrusting their life and their safety and well-being, but you're entrusting the lives of everybody that they touch, that they make into disciples, right? We've got examples of whole churches, especially Revelations, of just going off the path, right? And where does that start? Leadership. It always starts with, I always talk about whenever I hear something about a CEO doing something bad or can we talk about Rager Dykes? My job used to be to find those people. I used to work for a floor planning company called AFC, which is one of the biggest ones in the country, Auto Finance Corporation. And I would go out and find people that did the kind of stuff they did. So when it happened, I was like, I know exactly what they did. And it was like, wow. And everybody would come talk to me because, again, especially in my office, they'd be like, okay, so you know what they did. I was like, yeah, I can point exactly what they did. I know what they forged. They're like, well, people were not getting their title. I'm like, do you know how easy it is to get a duplicate title? There's a reason they didn't get their title, right? It's because if I don't give you a title, or if I don't put it in the database, then if I don't pull a VIN, it looks like you don't own it yet, so I can keep selling this car and keep selling the same car. I had a dealership, we're going to take a little sidebar here just because this is one of my favorite examples of a guy. I didn't catch him. He sometimes you don't catch him, eventually they're all going to fail because it's impossible to keep the ball rolling. This guy got in trouble right before I came onto this company. It was in Baltimore. It was a multi-million-dollar floor deal, which is really big, believe it or not, and especially for the used car market. And the way he got caught, what he was doing was, so we have another arm, because so everybody's like, well, why didn't the auditors catch him, right? Well, we had auditors. And the problem is that when you have a dealership that big, it's really easy to figure out when those auditors are going to come because they come once a month and they have to get those people there. Have I told you guys this story? Okay. And so these auditors, this guy in Baltimore, what he would do is he'd sell a car, not tell us, not tell Manheim or any other companies that they had floor planned it with. And he would say, he's like, all right, you wouldn't pay us. And then so when our auditors would come, they'd have a list of randomly generated people, right? So we're not going to hit all 200 cars in a day. So we're going to have to figure it out. And so we get a list and say, okay, this one's not here. And then we go ask him, as a good auditor would do, we say, what happened to this car? Did you sell it, whatever? And he goes, oh, that's on test drive. Now, in our policy, we have it to where we allow those, right? We allow so many test drives. And so, okay, well, next time we want to see. So again, him knowing where the thing was, we'd say, okay, test drive. He'd say, okay, I don't know when they're coming back. They're going to ask for that car. So he'd call the owners of the car, legal owners, right? They paid for this thing. He'd call and say, free car wash or free oil change or free whatever. Just bring your car. on this such and such day, that's when I can get you in. They bring it in, he slap a for sale sticker on, auditors would come and say, there it is, and then go on past. It's really smart, super legal, really smart. My dad had one about this oil guy down in Abilene that had like, I don't know, this was in the 70s, I think, or 80s, where he had so many oil derricks, but he really had one. And when he would drive the auditors around, he'd just paint a new number on the side real fast while he drove them around their property, confusing the auditors. That's why we're not really allowed to ride with people
That
anymore.
all looks the same over there in Odessa.
Yeah, well, this was near Abilene.
Oh.
Still, it does look close, as an ACU kid. Anyways, and that's what I say. I always like to say, because when that happened, people would like, well, what do you think about it? Like, well, the fish rots from the head down.
Yep.
And like, well, do you think he knew anything? I'm like, if he didn't, negligence is still a crime. Fish rots from the head down. The leader, you're in charge of what happens to your flock. And so, to me, that's why being an elder is such a big deal for us. It's why we go through the process we go through to appoint elders. Because it's a big deal to commit them not only to the Lord, but to commit. You're committing the church, the entire fellowship, those disciples, the gathering of people. You're committing their entire spiritual livelihood to these individuals. And to me that's a big deal. Again, it's a little side verse that they barely mention it, and I decided to hone in on it really bad. But to me, it's one of those things I think is a really big deal. So let's tie this up in a nice little bow, a really confusing bow, like how I tie Christmas presents. What we're seeing here is evangelism is not easy. Evangelism is not easy, but are we called to it? Are we expected to do it regardless of whether we feel good about talking to people or not? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't feel good about talking to people about my faith, especially in a work environment. But are we called to it? Simple answer is silence. Thank you. Yes. Simple answer is yes. What is the Great Commission? Everyone knows it.
Spread the word.
Spread the word. You don't have to mumble. Mumbling, my dad always said there were biblical precedents of people dying when they mumbled. I forgot where it was in the Bible, but he's like, don't mumble.
Well, I don't even remember the first 10 words, and then after that.
Go out in all the world.
It's like, yeah, that's where the mumble comes in.
That's where the mumbles and the grumbles. I think I have it written down, actually. Okay, so it's Matthew 28:19-20. And it says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. He told that to everybody. He didn't point out to Peter. He didn't point out to any of the other ones. I was going to say Matthias, but he came a little bit afterwards.
There's no saying he wasn't there.
True. Actually, there's a good assumption that if he became apostle later, he probably was there right there. Thank you for that. I'm going to say that from now on. So he told that to everyone. And I think he's still telling it to us today. So again, challenge, talk to somebody, reach out to somebody, and try as you might to just, I'm not expecting you to go out to the street corner right now and start yelling. Don't go to United and be like, hey, Jesus is coming, y'all. Because I'm pretty sure everybody's thinking that already with what we're doing right now. I know my in-laws are. But look for opportunities. I think that's the best way I can put that. Look for opportunities to spread the word. And trust that you'll be able to get back up and get back into that city. If you had a dead spot, get up, try again. Sometimes Paul tried in the same spot. Sometimes he got lowered from a basket, right? But he's kept trying. So anyways, that's all I have. I didn't fill the whole time. I almost did.
2 minutes?
What?
You have 2 minutes?
Okay, I can tell a funny story for 2 minutes. Just kidding. I can tell you about some other people I audited. I had a Greek guy in Chicago who forged signatures on documents. It's just, use car dealerships, guys. Watch out. Those people, I know it's a stereotype, but it really,
For a reason.
make sure that you get your title, make sure that you run your VIN, and make sure that you're the person who owns that vehicle. If you buy from somebody that might not be like a big dealership. Of course, he did that to Ford, so you never know. That's what I was surprised. I'm surprised that they did that to one of the big ones.
Being a big dealership doesn't help. Ryder was the biggest one in town.
Well, I mean, what I mean was a corporate, like the Ford, usually the Ford is better at it. But since the guy, CFO came from, he knew their audit schedule, like I said, he knew how to get around. But again, to me, that's one of those things that is a but anyway,
I knew he was a cook just by watching his commercials.
I think everybody did. I have yet, like my sister, I think worked for them as a seller for a little bit, just a little bit when she first graduated from LCU way a long time ago. And she even was like, yeah, they're like nobody, I don't think anybody was surprised, right? So that's fun. Lubbock's on the map for two things. The girl on TMZ with the everybody has coronavirus from tech, who apparently didn't even go to tech, and then regular bikes. The largest double floor plan scheme I think ever in existence. So got that going for it.
Buddy Holly.
See, Buddy Holly is nice, but cast iron next to Buddy Holly is better. Have you been to cast iron? Oh man, you got to go. There, I'm just gonna buy my pies from them for Thanksgiving. I'm not even gonna like worry about making them this year. And when I say my wife. Hey, I cook, all right? She's the baker, I'm the cook. Okay? But anyways, thank y'all.